Tēnā koutou katoa, ko whakatohea te iwi, ko Ngai Tamahaua te hapu, ko Ōpape te marae, ko Karen Brewer tōku ingoa. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow here in Te Kupunga Hauora Māori, and my background's in speech-language therapy. Today I'm going to show you a game that I've used for a few years now when teaching the speech-language therapy students. They're in the Faculty of Science, but I'm sure that won't make too much of a difference. This game doesn't actually have a name, which I find slightly unusual because I've used it for so long, but that's just how it is now. I can't take credit for this game. It's from a PhD colleague of mine, Stuart Dearness, and he mentioned it when I was participating in the Doctoral Academic Career module in 2012. Stuart used this game to illustrate power and social justice. I've used it in several ways over the years, and the students really seem to enjoy it and get a lot from it. My original intention today was to actually play the game with you, but I think to really do it justice we need about 45 minutes, and that wasn't going to work. So it is a pity, because I think you would have liked running around the Grafton campus wearing rabbit ears, but you'll just have to imagine that. This game is based on the food chain. Students take the role of the hunter, the lion, the dog, or the rabbit. When we had our meeting about planning today, some of the suggestions were, well, why don't you make these New Zealand birds and animals? Native species, introduced species, that kind of thing. And I'm going to work on that for next year. You can see there's more rabbits than there are hunter, and as you go up, so there's fewer. And the pegs are allocated according to your role. So the rabbits get the most pegs to start with. The people in each role, the numbers, absolute numbers, can be altered, but the proportions need to stay about the same. This just happened to be for the speech science class that had 19 students in it. The game itself is just a basic game of tag. You tag someone and they give you a peg, which you then peg onto your clothing and carry on. But you can only tag people who are lower down the food chain than you are, which of course means that the rabbits, they can't take pegs off anybody. This is the equipment I use for the game. As students arrive in class, you know, they dawdle in bit by bit, and I like to use that time to get them to draw their role out of a hat and make their costume. You can use whatever costumes you want. The only purpose of them is so that when you're playing, you can immediately identify who you're allowed to tag and who you're not. I quite enjoy the bunny ears that they need to staple on, particularly when we start the lecture and they're all wearing these bunny ears. I say, you don't have to wear them quite yet. The dogs, they just get the canteen bandana to tie somewhere. The lions don't have anything, and the hunter has that gun, which you can see I have cleverly made so it doesn't look like a gun. We haven't had any armed offenders call-outs yet. Either that, I'm just not very artistic. As I said, I think this is a good way of making use of the time while students are trickling into class. We don't usually play the game until later in class, and that's because speech science lectures go for 3 hours, and this is a really good way of breaking it up in the middle. Every year I get quite nervous before this session. I worry it's going to rain. I worry the students are going to look at me and go, "You want me to do what?" But as yet the weather has been good, and as we head outside, there's quite an excited buzz in the class. There was one year a whole group got together and I said, "What are you guys doing?" And they said, "We're the rabbits and we're making a plan of how we're going to." So then we go outside and we mark out the playing field. I'd like to say that at Tāmaki we have lots of empty car parks, and it's quite a good place for it. Inevitably someone says, "Hey, here's my phone, can you take a photo for our class Facebook page?" Which also shows me that they're quite enjoying themselves. They're not ashamed to be doing this. And the game itself only lasts 5 or 10 minutes because the rabbits get tired and they run out of pegs, and then they get bored and just start hanging around. So this is the 2015 class. I went on the speech science students' Facebook page just the other day and said, "Has anyone got a photo?" And within about 10 minutes I had 3 classes had sent me their photo. You can see where the students have pegged the pegs on their clothing, ready to go. So when we come back into class, we complete a table that looks a bit like this. These are the total pegs for those group of animals. I've just done a mock-up of the numbers in brackets, but it usually looks something like this. So the pegs, of course, start off at the bottom with the rabbits, and they slowly move up. As someone said the other day, it's the trickle-up effect. And usually there are one or two rabbits who are really fast runners, or good at hiding, and they manage to keep most of their pegs. But it usually has this kind of effect. So when we've drawn up this table, we have a bit of a discussion in class, and it's actually all about the discussion, and it's all about where you engineer the discussion to go. So who had the most pegs? At the start, at the finish, what's happened to the distribution of the pegs? Why did it happen like that? How did the rabbits feel about this? How did the rabbits feel while they were playing the game? How do they feel now? How did the rabbits respond to their situation during the game? How did the hunter feel? Why did the hunter feel like this? And you can use it to illustrate many things, as you're probably thinking already, depending on how you engineer this discussion. It's important that you draw out as much from the students as possible, using the questioning to get them to arrive at the point that you're aiming for. So in the latest one that I did was about the social determinants of health. So I had questions like, sure, the hunters and the lions, they worked really hard for their pegs, they did a lot of running. But the rabbits and the dogs, they worked really hard as well, and they ended up going backwards. I asked, did the rabbits never feel like giving up? It's kind of futile, so why bother trying? And some people feel like that when it comes to living a healthy lifestyle or participating in healthcare. Then I asked, did you all have the same opportunities in that game? Well, you're all allowed to run around in the same area, and you've all got 2 legs and more or less the same physical ability. And then I say, we're going to go and play it again. Who wants to change their character? And you can imagine that the hunter says, no. And the rabbit's, oh, yes, please. And so then we talk about why. Why do you want to change your character? Why don't you want to change yours? Then there's these possible solutions that we talk through, and we had a bit of fun with these in Te Kupunga Hauora Māori the other day. So what if we gave the rabbits more pegs to start with? So if pegs are health, how can we rearrange this game so there's a more even distribution of health? We could just give the rabbits more pegs. Then we think, well, what's the implication of this? They're not going to keep them, are they? What about if we had an exercise program for rabbits so they can learn to run faster? Or we could learn about rabbit culture so we can relate to them better and understand why they don't take pegs. And this was Reese's suggestion the other day, that we could find the rabbit with the most pegs and find out why they are so resilient. And from the laughter in the room, I'm hoping this means you understand that we're not really talking about rabbits and pegs here. Though I have had a few exam questions that have used pegs as an illustration of things. So how could we really change the outcome of the game? The way I see it, there's 2 ways to change the distribution of the pegs. One is that the rules of the game don't change, but you change the distribution of the pegs once they've been earned. So we could have a higher tax rate for those higher up the food chain. We could have peg welfare for the rabbits, something like that. Or we could change the rules of the game so that all players have an equitable opportunity to gain their pegs. To me, the latter seems more satisfactory. I suspect rabbits, I haven't actually put this bit to the class yet, since this came about discussions the other day as well, but I suspect rabbits would actually prefer to earn their own pegs during the game rather than have them taken away and then doled back out to them. So of course, the only way to change the distribution of the pegs is to change the rules of the game. which equates to changing the rules of society, be they official policies or unwritten rules of interactions and the way society functions. When Stuart uses this game, he actually gets the students to make up some new rules, and then they go back out and they play it again and come back and look at what's happened with the pegs this time. I haven't actually tried that, but I think it would be an interesting exercise to do. I haven't as yet conducted any assessment following this game, but I'm planning to this coming year. And I'm thinking along these lines to get students to make the connections to real life and to think about how they can apply their learning from this game in their clinical practice as speech-language therapists. These are some other possible illustrations you could use this game for, and I suspect there's plenty more that you could think of. Initially, I used it to illustrate power in research as an introduction to kaupapa Māori research, and several students commented, because I had a question that was something like, how are the pegs distributed in your research project? And several students commented they'd never looked at research in this way before. So I just thought I'd end with some student comments from it. Apparently the activity helped with alertness and concentration, and they just seemed to really enjoy it. And here we have the 2014 class. You can see they got some grass to play on. That's me, thank you.
Kia ora, Karen. Question for clarification.
Oh yeah, so the question was about how do you decide who gets what role when you start out. They just draw it out of a hat. They get a little slip of paper. That's the way we do it.